Welcome to episode 129 of Project Geekology. My name is Dakota. I'm one-third of your host. I'm joined as always with...
Anthony. And joining us...
Rich. Super excited to talk to you guys about Smallville this week. I'll just tell you guys, off air this was said, I told everybody involved in this podcast that I would have been willing, if they were willing to do this, I was willing to just make this a 100 something episode run of just Smallville, like a weekly discussion, breaking each episode down. And luckily for you guys, our other hosts care about you more than that, so we will not be doing that. But I'm super excited. I don't know about you, gents.
Our 3 fans are grateful.
You know what? I would love to do something like that. I don't know that I have the stamina for it. I have the love for it. You know, I do really love this show. I think going back to this show again, it's easily in my top 5, top 10 shows ever. But yeah, I don't know that each episode deserves a full hour of my attention, vocally anyway. But as a whole, season-wide, I think that we can make a really, really nice episode out of each season. And there's 10 seasons. So, instead of breaking it up into, half seasons or whatever, I think if we go back to Smallville down the line, we'll just do whole seasons just because it encompasses an entire story and a vibe that each season has. And I think the first season has a very specific vibe that we can talk about as a whole. So
right, and I feel like even when the show starts to dive into lore, like Superman lore, it's not enough to where I feel like I need to break it down into a 2-parter. Like Rings of Power definitely needed to be broken down into 2 halves. I really wish that we did that with Shogun. Shogun 100% could have gone for that treatment, but this is something that we decided after the fact. But yeah, no, I really do think that I guess depending on whatever it is that we're covering, yeah, Smallville, I could say that we could do the full season in a 1 episode run, because we don't really have to do a play by play of each episode.
We will be talking about certain moments in each episode, maybe not each episode, but moments that stuck out to us individually, and we'll touch on that as a group. But yeah, it's gonna be exciting discussing Smallville, and we won't be doing it every single week, but we definitely want to eventually get through the 10 seasons of Smallville. I think that would be a fun goal for us. But as it stands, we're covering the first 21 episodes of Smallville, the first season, starting with the pilot episode, ending in I forget what the final episode is called, but it's something akin to, it's Tempest. It's called Tempest. So yeah, we're going to be covering all of that and more. You know what? Before we get into any of that, let's jump into what we've been up to this past week. Let's start with you, Rich. What have you been up to? I hopefully something epic.
I will just recap it quickly, but, I did attend a number of Met games. They were actually back in town. They were away and had some group tickets lined up a long, long time ago. So these weren't even spur of the moment tickets. Pete Alonso is a very prolific player on the New York Mets. One of my favorites, despite the fact that Mr. Soto got paid so much money. I actually woke up in the offseason every day just looking at Twitter going, please tell me they signed Pete Alonso. I didn't care that we got the other guy. I needed Pete. And he's been a Met his entire career, so nobody's really come close to ever being able to do this. He took over the franchise lead for home runs at 254 home runs. So I got to be there in attendance.
So the record now is 254 home runs for a Mets player.
Yes, as wearing a Mets uniform. So for example, there was a player, Gary Sheffield, who played for a lot of teams. And when he played on the Mets, he did hit his 500th home run as a Met.
But it doesn't count because he wasn't a Met for most of that.
Exactly.
I understand.
So these are two.
So Pete Alonso is the top of the top when it comes to Mets players and home runs.
Yeah. So
Very cool.
It was a cool moment.
And you were there for that game.
Yeah.
That's exciting. How was the stadium?
It was crazy. I mean, the only thing that I think, obviously being in person was, I was so happy. I remember sitting there and I was getting anxious during his at-bats because now every time he comes up everybody's like, oh, this could be it, right? So the first time he came up, he hit one like, let's say 5 feet short of the left field wall, and you're like, oh man, he's trying to do it. And the next at bat, he came up, and I think that was he just hit it out like right away. And they did they had like a graphic. They call him the polar bear, so they had like polar bear animations walking past strawberries because Darryl Strawberry was the guy who has the record. So it's like he's walking, and it's very weird.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Definitely AI slop. Like, it's absurd. And then
was it
the play-by-play guy for the Mets actually said, he says out loud, he's like, Pete Alonso has reached it. He's on an iceberg all alone. Like, because
how sad for him. How sad for Pete Alonso. Like, that's poor. Get him off of there.
So that was pretty cool. Yeah, and we got to see a bunch of movies. We went to see, now since we last recorded, I also think I added Bad Guys too.
How was that?
Really fun. My son and wife love the books. They read them together, like, as a bedtime kind of thing routine. So he's really been into him. So they were very excited about it. And I just thought it was weird when I realized it was Sam Rockwell as the lead voice, because I think of him as like that twerp in Iron Man.
Iron Man 2, yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't even realize that there was books for Bad Guys. Very interesting, very interesting. Let's bring it over to Anthony. What the heck have you been up to, my guy?
Man, I have been living my 2004 life, man, or 2005. Yeah, okay. Man.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, dude. Like, I've been watching Smallville and playing World of Warcraft, because I've seen Smallville, like, a few times. It's definitely one of those things that, like, I know what's going on, so I don't have to fully pay attention. And so, like, I'll be playing World of Warcraft, and then I'll watch, like, what's going on screen, and then go back to WoW. And dude, it's just been a good time. Like, it really brought me back to, like, my childhood doing that. But yeah, no, I've been just, Smallville-ing it up. I mean, I had already seen season 1 like a couple weeks ago. So, like, right now I'm on season 3. Season 1 is fresh in my mind, and it's the season that I've seen the most. So it's, and it's not, it doesn't really start to dive into deeper, Krypton lore until you get to season 2. So, it's nothing too crazy in the first season, but yeah, it's been a good time, man.
Awesome. That's really cool to hear. I'm happy to hear.
What about you, Dakota? I know you got some stuff going on.
Not as much as you might think. In fact, I pretty much have just been binging Smallville, which has been fun. I think a big portion of doing Smallville seasons as a whole for a weekly show means that you're pretty much going to spend most of your free time anyway, watching Smallville episodes. And it's a lovely opportunity to just, revisit stuff that you haven't visited in decades. So for me, this was a really, really fun experience because my wife Jen has never watched Smallville. Like, she might have watched an episode or two here or there, just like in passing. Like, I might have turned on something, or my brother might have turned on something, and she experienced it that way. But she didn't really ever get into any of the character drama or anything like that. So this has been a really fun experience because I've been able to experience it for the first time through someone else's eyes, even though I know exactly what's going to happen each and every episode. It's fun. I'm really enjoying it. And yeah, I don't think I've been up to anything else crazy. I will be going to Iceland tomorrow, so I'm going to be out next week. Whether or not there will be a Project Geekology show out next week is up to our other hosts, but I will not be present.
Yes, I think that Rich and I will kind of like plan it out to see what we'll be releasing, so just keep an ear out. That episode will be a surprise, and it should be good. Yeah, I think this will be the first time that it's going to be a Rich and Anthony episode. We haven't had a Dakota and Rich episode, but maybe in the future.
And we're probably thinking about like a deep dive on the Marlins baseball franchise starting in 1997. So
Anthony's just shaking his immediately. Anthony just started shaking his head. I love it. Yeah, no, I would love that. No, I'm excited to hear what you guys come up with for next episode. But for this episode, I think we should, just dive right into all of Smallville. What I want to talk about just going back to this show and what it means or what it meant back in the day. Because this was before any of the CW, like, Arrowverse shows were a thing. This was before Flash. This was before Arrow. This was before Legends of Tomorrow or anything like that. Supergirl. There was another Superman show, actually. There was a bunch of shows that all kind of stemmed out of what was the space that Smallville left after it concluded after 10 seasons. Because after, the 10th season of Smallville, that's when they started Arrow and all that. And, that spawned a whole genre of like an in-universe series. And I think that's awesome that they were able to, like, make that a reality. But that would never have been possible if it weren't for the 10 seasons of Smallville, iterating the initial run of, like, Superman before he was Superman. And I think that's a very special thing. I think it's very cool that, the very first DC comic superhero is the one that kickstarted a huge franchise for Warner Brothers and CW, even though it's not like a huge franchise nowadays. It was for a good portion of the 2010s.
Yeah, it went on for a while, man. It spanned pretty much from the early 2000s all the way to the early 2010s, and it lasted pretty long. I mean, 10 seasons of this show. A lot of shows don't last that long.
So Smallville actually, I think for a good portion of time, it held the record for longest running American sci-fi drama.
Wow.
Like a live action American sci-fi drama. I think it hit like 210 episodes or something like that. Something close to around 200 plus episodes that were consecutively released over a 10-year period without any major breaks. And that is a record that I think was only broken by Supernatural. I think Supernatural was the one that, broke that record. But it's still very impressive.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Supernatural, one of the characters of that show was on Smallville in a later season.
No. This is only season 1. We don't know about those people yet.
I know the reference.
What do you call it? I guess the rules on spoilers are just they're non-existent now. But yeah, whenever we get to,
I would love it.
Whenever we get to that season, we'll talk about it.
Honestly, Anthony, I want you to say it, right? And I want somebody to write into the show and be like, I can't believe I've been waiting to watch the entirety of Smallville, and I was listening to season 1 to see if I would dive in, and you've ruined it for me, Anthony.
That would be wild. That'd be like
really old hate. Like, just think about that.
It's like, what rock were you under?
So let's talk a lot about Smallville season 1. I think one thing that I really like about this first season is that it's not immediately grabbing. Like, when I think of Smallville, I think of the long arcs that the characters have drama-wise in later seasons. We start getting multi-episode story arcs later down the line. And we only really start getting those in the end of the first season when they start threading in story beats that pay off later. And for a good portion of season 1, it's like them continuously just dipping their toes in the pool and seeing, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? And some of it does, some of it doesn't. So I want to hear your thoughts on, like, what did work this season. I know, Anthony, you're all the way in season 3 at this point, and Rich, you're well into season 2. I started watching season 2 as well. But we're just talking season 1 right now. What really worked for you in the beginning of Smallville, and what didn't work for you in the beginning of Smallville? Let's start with Anthony.
So kind of like, it's exactly like what you said. It doesn't grab you right away, I guess, like story-wise. And I think that's why we got a lot of the freak of the week, especially in the beginning of that season, where it was also a way to kind of showcase what Clark can do at that time, because by the time we get to Smallville, I mean, it starts off with the meteor shower that, Krypton explodes, the meteor shower happens, but we don't get Clark at a very young age. I mean, you see him, as a kid popping up to Jonathan and Martha Kent, but you get him at his, at his freshman year of high school. And so I think in the beginning, it's trying to show you what he can do, like what he knows, and that there's a lot that he just doesn't know. I really like that we have this young Clark that he knows that he has super strength. He knows that he has super speed and this invulnerability until he comes across kryptonite. But it's, and even then in this season, they call it meteor rock. They don't even call it kryptonite. So I like that. I like that they build up to the name of it, and that even the name of it, I mean, you find it out later, but I like that there's a lot that, even if you're a Superman fan, about some of these elements. I like that they build them up. And like you said, they start to pay off in later seasons. And I think that that's what they do really well, is to really set the tee up, and then for them to just, whack away at, at some of these, later story beats. But yeah, like you said, I think that the fact that it kind of, it has a little bit of a slow start is what kind of messes up it messes it up a little bit, but not enough to take you out completely. And I think that at the time that you and I watched it, we were young enough to really not care about some of this stuff. And so we look back on it fondly. I know you and I, we kind of know our experiences with Smallville. We watched it back when it premiered. So, yours and I, our experiences are very similar. I'm really interested in hearing what Rich has to say, kind of to answer your question, and his relationship with that, in those earlier days. Did Rich, did you watch it when it started coming out, or did you watch it down the line?
It's hard to pinpoint. So I think that I didn't watch it at first. What year did it come out?
This was 2001.
Okay, so I'm 19 at the time, and I don't think I had started to watch it. I think I ended up moving in with a roommate who was pretty into it, and he tried to get me to watch a couple. And then something, kind of my work schedule changed, and it was actually a big deal because I used to work in a group home. So, I'd have to go to appointments and stuff like that, but a lot of the time was spent in the house. So you'd have the TV on. So when I worked the morning shift, I watched all of Charmed. The woman who was the boss of that shift basically was like, by the way, we watched Charmed here. It was always Charmed. We never missed an episode of Charmed. And then when I worked the night shift, the kind of crew, the shift leader, was a huge fan of Smallville. So it was on every night on ABC Disney or ABC Family, I think at the time it was called. So that's how I started watching it. Was really he was really into it. I'd watch some of it with him, and then they did one of those random resets when they're doing reruns, and he was like, "Oh, this is the perfect moment for you." So then we binged it, as much as you could binge in those days. We watched it every day. And I don't think they played them on Saturdays and Sundays. I think they stayed true to the rerun model, let's say 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. every Monday through Friday. So if the Monday show would be the one from the Friday show. So I ended up, I'd say maybe in the middle, probably somewhere in the middle, catching up on it. And there are things I love about it. I do fondly recall it being one of the first superhero shows that I got to watch. So that was really cool. I forgot how much, and I'm not saying the actors, but I forgot how many of the characters I absolutely despise. I can't stand them. If I was their teacher, I would have a hard time holding my disdain back from these students. I don't want to name names.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that for sure.
Are you talking about the fully grown adult high schoolers that back then it was believable? So it was believable for like Dakota and I because, you know, we were younger and everybody was older than us. But then like you look back at it now and you're like, nah, these are college kids and they're in high school.
I could buy, okay, so like Allison Mack, I can buy kind of as a high school kid. I don't know if she's the oldest.
Tom Wellington.
Oh, Tom Wellington.
Tom Welling is like, that man looks like he's in senior year of college.
Yeah, no, he is. And Lana can pass, I think, too. And honestly, Pete, I'm not sure if it's because he's also smaller. And I think that he works for his. I think I can buy him being in high school more definitely than Tom Welling. And then, you know, then you've got Lex, who, I don't know, is supposed to be like 6 years older than them and creepily involved in their entire lives. Because
it's so funny, like when Clark would walk into the mansion and look so much like they're so close in age.
Yeah,
and like they're about the same height and everything too. Like I think Clark was a little bit taller. Actually, I think he's just a bit taller. So it's just so funny. But like, you know, that's just a little bit of the knocks. But it's not just Smallville. That's just what it was. That was that time. You had people that were well into their 20s playing high schoolers in a lot of movies and TV shows back then.
So actually, Pete was the youngest of all of these guys.
Yes.
He was 18 years old in 2001.
Wasn't Kristen? I think she was about that age too.
She and Allison Mack were 19 in 2001. So they were roughly around the same age. Tom Welling was 24. I think Michael Rosenbaum was a little older than the rest of them.
Dude, Michael Rosenbaum, man. Like,
we'll get to Lex.
Oh, man.
He's so good, but we'll get to it. I want to chime in really quick about the first couple episodes, or just the first season in general. Like, as a whole, first seasons are hard, especially for long-running shows like this that are trying to get their feet, trying to find their audience. I think of some of the bigger shows in the science fiction realm, and I think of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Everyone always says that the first season is really rough, and it is. It's the hardest one to really get into because it's just clearly a writer's room of people with ideas like, well, let's do an episode about this. Let's do an episode about that. Let's do an episode about this. And they don't really gel together. There's no real overarching story in season one of The Next Generation. After that point, you start getting character arcs and, you know, multi-season dramas with the cast. And I feel the same thing is happening in this first season of Smallville, where it takes a long time before we start getting multi-episode stories and multi-episode arcs for characters. And that's not a bad thing, but it definitely hurts it on a rewatch, I think, for me, just because I do miss the multi-series arcs. So, like, going back to the first season, watching 10 episodes, and it's just 10 episodes of Freak of the Week, and Clark is trying to figure out, like, you know, whatever's going on with Meteors in that episode. It's fine, and it's fun, but it doesn't have the draw that, like, the best of Smallville has, is what I'm trying to, you know, get at. I think real Smallville doesn't start until the end of season one and, like, really, you know, takes off in the beginning of season two. And I think it takes a little bit of getting into just to get into it, if that makes sense. And so if you've never seen Smallville and you start watching it and you're 4 or 5 episodes in, you're just like, wow, this is just villain of the week or freak of the week, whatever. Just take your time, keep going. It does get better, and it's worth putting the time into it because the show's genuinely very good. And when we were growing up, Anthony and I, and Rich, you said you were 19 at the time, there was nothing like it. There was no long form superhero live action content. None. You know, there was a couple live action movies here or there. You had the Blade movie. You had just before Smallville, you had X-Men, the first movie. Just shortly after the first season, you had Spider-Man, the first movie. But long form content did not exist for superhero media. So this was it. This was the canon that you had to subscribe to for, you know, extra superhero lore and content and just diving into a universe, like besides comic books. This was it. And I think that it did a phenomenal job because it does get into pretty heavy lore. It just takes a while. Like Anthony said, they didn't even call it kryptonite. The word kryptonite does not appear in the first 21 episodes of the show, and even past that. It's just not in the first season. It's just meteor rocks. Up until, Clark learns more about his own personal lore, we don't learn that yet. So I think it's a really, subjectively, I think it's a fantastic time capsule into, a period where we weren't bombarded with superhero content left and right. And it's definitely worth picking up because there was nothing like it at the time. But yeah, there is still plenty to enjoy. Let's finally start talking about some of the characters and some of the, inner workings of everybody. I'm going to throw it off to Rich because I know he has some extremely spicy takes for this extremely benign TV series. Anthony and I are going to be perhaps agreeing to some extent and perhaps disagreeing to a larger extent. But we'll start with Rich. Which characters do you like and which characters do you not like?
All right, so I like the Kents.
Love the Kents.
I like the portrayal. Yeah. I think the actors are good. I love Lionel Luthor, a man from Gremlins 2. I can't remember the actor's name, but he's from Gremlins 2. Also, by the way, I had to look it up because I was like, that man is older than me, and he has glorious hair. And I need
the most luscious hair.
And
most luscious hair.
It is a wig. I looked it up.
No.
Yeah, it's a wig.
You're lying to me.
No, I had a feeling, but I liked him a lot. I think Michael Rosenbaum, Lex.
So it's John Glover, by the way. John Glover
yeah.
is the actor for Lionel Luthor, the father of Lex Luthor.
I think he's in a Muppet Christmas Carol too, but I can't remember for sure. But anyway,
impossible to say. Yeah.
I think Michael Rosenbaum does such a good job of. I feel like I was fooled in the first. I remember that he's duplicitous throughout, whatever, but it's like you start to see. I think the actor just does such a great job. The portrayal is great. Because the truth is Clark's our analog, right? Like in some ways you kind of see the show through his eyes, right? And you're meant to kind of take his side most of the time, right? Sometimes he acts like an annoying teenager with his dad and stuff like that. Like, why can't I play football? Come on, man. Like, come on, And that whole episode being about how, no, it's that you don't trust his judgment. And that's why he's upset. And it's like the boy doesn't understand that he can literally kill someone. And in his first practice, he used Superman jumping abilities, first practice on camera. I know it's not TikTok era, but my dude, your dad was like, hey, don't do anything crazy. And he's like, by the way, second play of the game or practice, I'm going to do something crazy. So, but he's a teenager. So whatever,
He's 14. Can't you see that he's 14?
I think that's another problem.
Man. It's that teenage angst, man.
Okay,
we all wanted to do our own thing.
See, that might be another one of the problems also.
With him looking older?
Yeah, because, okay, so my main villain, I think the villain of the story, some of you might say maybe one day, and I'm not trying to do spoilers, I'm just going to say the name Doomsday because it's part of Superman. I can't remember anything about the show that far, all right? So... no, the main villain is not Doomsday. It's not Bizarro, ladies and gentlemen. It's Lana Lang. From episode 1, she is the main antagonist. You're like, wait, but Lex hits him with a car. It has to be Lex. You're wrong. You're wrong. She is in a committed relationship with, a bag of trash over here in Whitney, who, as you guys can't see this, but behind Dakota in his background is Tom Welling, being hung out, crucified by Whitney.
In a
cornfield just for existing. And then he oddly leaves his girlfriend's very important, valuable necklace around the neck of this guy who he's just bullying to possible death, which is, stand-up guy. And she keeps seeing him for who he is and not leaving him, but then consistently stringing Clark along. And this guy's there's one episode where he's like, I'm just trying to leave the door open, Mom. And his mom's like, Clark, the door is closed, right? The door is
She
closed.
actually says those. She says those words. Yeah.
I mean, so, and it's just I don't. And then what? She just kind of like drops out of school, decides to run the coffee shop, which she gets really lucky and Lex opens up. She's just a.
I don't think she ever drops out of school.
No, she stays in school. Yeah,
she definitely doesn't stay in school. I don't know how a 14-year-old
is managing
runs a coffee shop.
But how she's managing the Talon at the end.
She's managing the Talon, but she is also in school. You just got to roll with it.
Yeah, man, suspension of disbelief.
But
is needed with the show.
What I do like is I love actually the Freak of the Week stuff. I could probably watch like 175 episodes of Freak of the Week and just see how long they could do it without having to like redo one, But I mean, I love the different ways that, I mean, man, that first season, like I'm in the bathroom and I heard like a rumbling because we have the pipe to the outside, and when you turn it for the hose, the air pressure is kind of built up, so there's a slight rumble when it starts. And my son put it on, and I thought it was the bees. I was like, oh man, it's those damn meteor.
It's Queen
rock
Bee,
bees, I love it, man. I love the bugs, and they attack him, and the bug kid, and then he gets better looking as he molts. I ate all that. Like I think I almost like that stuff better, at least in the first season. Like I think it is moving a little too slow with the lore, so I kind of liked that stuff. I do have a little bit of kind of exhaustion already with him being possibly found out. And I feel like already in the first season and 2 episodes or 3 episodes of season 2, I think they're like getting like they get entirely too close too many times to being had. I think for the
Anthony,
first,
I'm gonna give it over to you
for the first season and a half. You know what I mean?
Sure. Okay. All right. So a lot was said.
Sorry.
Let's keep on with what Rich is saying currently about the fact that there is far too many instances where Clark has potentially been had or is coming very close to Lex finding out the truth. How do you feel about like what Lex knows now versus, what are your thoughts? Like there's a lot that goes on in the first season that could potentially out Clark.
Right. No, there's definitely a lot of like close calls, and I guess that could, the argument for that would be like, yeah, he's young, so while he's decent at being secretive, there might be some instances, especially with him being the kind of person that's always at like a crime scene. Like how is this guy doing all this stuff?
Every episode, I have to think about this show like in a bubble, because did he just start high school and start like experiencing all of these weird things that happen on a weekly basis? Or did this happen in middle school too? Like, they don't really explain it. They don't explain it.
No, it's
they don't. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like,
puberty
we don't get a young, don't get a Clark.
Okay,
it's puberty. It's like you skip from Jesus as being born to the action times. Like I think we're made to assume that he wasn't allowed to participate in sports. He wasn't. He had to be very limited. And I think also that he would have been way more obedient of his parents. So,
but here's the thing: like the Freak of the Week.
Oh,
did that just start happening when he entered high school? There was a wall of weird prior to him entering high school, which makes me wonder: is Chloe a freshman or is she a sophomore? I don't really know. I'm assuming they're the same school year, but then later on she gets an internship with the Daily Planet. So I'm a little bit confused because you wouldn't normally get an internship after your freshman year of high school.
It's wild. Actually, you know what? With you being on like, the topic of Chloe, how does she have so much free reign, like just to go into the torch at any time? Like this girl's there at like in the middle of the night working. What school allows a student just to show up at like a newspaper in the middle of the night? Rich, you work at a school. Would you have students that are there in the middle of the night just doing whatever they wanted?
I mean, almost every building closes at a certain point, and even like in the days of lower security, when I first started teaching, you wouldn't have anything like that. I was part of newspaper staffs. I was the teacher in charge of newspapers, and there was never a time where it was dark outside and we were working on the newspaper. And like
right, and there was never a teacher.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They could have. I don't know if it would have killed them that much to have, because they end up having to have the principal talk to the student directly, right? Principal Kwong has to like talk directly to Chloe and basically suspends her for not confirming her sources. The principal usually calls the teacher in charge of the program and deals with it that way. I don't know why there wasn't that character. And the character could have eventually, maybe started picking up on Clark. It could have been another, because it also is kind of crazy that nobody at school seems to. I mean, it's also very easy to get a job there. Like Desiree got a job, no problem.
Oh, that was season 2.
I'm sorry.
Let's dial it back, Rich. Come on, let's get on track. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about security. You mentioned, in the low security days of high school, a majority of this season was filmed in a pre 9/11 world. And I think that's important because we do see a little bit of influence on a post 9/11 world by the end of this season. I don't know if you guys are cognizant of it at the time or, if you've researched it after the point. But after 9/11 happened, there was a large push in media for like pro-army, pro-marine, type stuff happening. And we actually do get a little bit of that at the end of this season where Whitney I think he signs up to be one of the Marines. And I think that's...
Yes.
It's a very timely thing because that episode occurs in early 2000, or in the school year, it would be like just starting summer 2002, but it was filmed early 2002, so just months after 9/11 happened, and there was a big push both in media and the news cycle to just, join your local service of your choice, and, so be it. But I thought it was interesting because you don't see a lot of that happening in TV shows where just a character will just join the army, and that's how they leave the show for a period of time. I don't remember if Whitney comes back. I think he does for a little bit. But at the end of the season, I was kind of surprised because it is very much a time capsule. Like you mentioned in the last episode, Anthony, this show is very much a time capsule of the early 2000s. And I thought that was interesting. But going back to Chloe being allowed into the building at odd hours of the day, this was a pre 9/11 show for much of the first season. And
I still don't think that would have been something that would have occurred. Like,
perhaps,
yeah, like a student being, even like, I don't know, like, I mean, we were in school in a not high school, but we still know we were in school pre 9/11, and for the most part, I'm pretty sure that like you had to have some sort of supervision and something, especially, and even in a lot of the media that portrays like students in a school paper environment, there was always a teacher that was the editor, and then they would read over like the students' work. So like, whether this being pre or post 9/11, I still think that it's still like kind of weird. Like, it's still, like, I don't want to like try to be poking holes. I love this show. And for me, it is what it is. That's what gives the charm of the show. But, I was like watching it over. I was thinking like, yeah, this is kind of like this. She just gets to do whatever she wants. Bizarre. Like she's a staff, like she's staff at the school.
What's even weirder, sticking with the Chloe side of things for now, how does she get that job? Because I'm assuming she's a freshman. Everyone else in the show is a freshman, except for Whitney.
I thought about that
senior.
Too.
I think Whitney's the only senior. Everyone else is, Pete, Clark, Lana. Everyone's a freshman. How did Chloe become the editor of the school newspaper? Like, usually that's something that's passed down as you prove your worth over the course of your high school career.
They gave it to her right away.
I imagine she's
just-
such an intrepid reporter in middle school.
I know.
That she just got like so many recommendations.
It was the accolades.
It was the accolades that she received. All right, let's jump forward. I think we got to address the elephant in the room, which is, the villain of the first season, the absolute arch nemesis, which is Lana Lang. Anthony, do you believe that Lana Lang is the nemesis of the show?
Nah, man. Dude, I loved Lana. Like, she was my crush on that show.
Well,
Yeah, I got
You
it.
know,
to be fair,
and
that's
she
probably
she could
why-
do no wrong.
That's
Okay, go
why
ahead.
I think. Okay, that's what I wanted. I just wanted Clark to get the girl, man. She made me so angry.
Sure,
I felt
sure,
for Clark. I feel for him. When he's like, I'm leaving the door open, like while she's in a committed relationship with somebody else, like he refuses to date anybody, and then when
But I think that makes Clark better. I think that the back and forth with Lana made Clark a better character, because ultimately it wasn't a feel-good story throughout. He didn't get the girl this season. We spent a whole season of this character pining for this other character, and he did not get the girl. And I think that is part of the charm of the show, in the sense that, like, it's realistic. You're experiencing life as a teenager through the eyes of these characters. I say realistic very fluidly in this instance. I don't actually mean it's a realistic show, but the feeling that you get, like not being able to achieve what you want to achieve, or being held back by your parents because of X, Y, and Z, or not being able to accomplish this because something comes up in your life, is something very, very teenager. And I think that is what is actually being showcased. I think, specifically Lana and Clark, the fact that he's willing to show humility, even though he has every ability to potentially take the girl of his dreams as his own. He could, stop being Superman. He could stop being the one who saves everyone. He could be the one who shows up at every party. He could be the one who shows up to everything that Lana or Chloe or Pete ever does. But he chooses not to. And I think that is what is the ultimate sacrifice of Superman, is that he cannot be what he wants to be while also being the person that he needs to be. And I think that is why I don't think Lana is necessarily the bad person in this show, because I think Lana wants to believe that Clark can be a successor to Whitney, but he never proves her right, ultimately. Personally, that's the way I see it.
Right. Like, she wants to trust him, but he's shown that there is some stuff that he's withholding from her, and she's not, I think that for a lot of people that would put you off of that. You might still care about them, but you might be like, I don't know how close I want to get to this person if they don't really want to share. And you see that, like, and I know this is like, later on, but like the further you get into the show, like, she shows her open-mindedness to whatever it is that Clark, is hiding. And, it's still apparent in this first season too. But, she has Whitney in her life, so she's kind of torn. I feel like because, obviously Whitney is a senior, she's probably torn because, she has, I guess, these feelings for Clark that start to develop, but then she is in a committed relationship, which she probably sees that, that he's going to go off to, at one point, he was going to go to college to play football. Then he decides to become a Marine. So, at some point, Whitney was going to leave, right? So that thought process was probably going on in the mind of this character too. To me, I believe so because of how torn she is.
And, even getting into like the very first couple episodes of season 2, without spoiling anything, Lana does see and mention that Clark has way too many, secrets that he's withholding. It's very obvious secrets that he's withholding from them to make a realistic relationship work. And yeah, so I think that's part of why, like, Whitney just seems to be the better choice for her, I guess. But again, even there's an episode. I feel like we could talk, like Rich said, like there's so many things that we could talk about episode after episode. But there's the episode Nicodemus where Lana becomes uninhibited by this plant that was resurrected after 100 or so years. It's the most ridiculous episode. But you know what? Let's roll with it. She gets uninhibited. She tells Whitney, I'm only with you because I feel guilty that by leaving you, it would do you more harm than good. It proves to the audience that she's only with Whitney for a majority of the season because she feels guilty. And for a good majority of the season, Whitney's father has been in the hospital on and off because of heart problems. So there's something emotional holding Lana back from fully giving in to her feelings for Clark or for divorcing her feelings from Whitney. So there's a lot going on. I don't think that Lana is the nemesis of the show. I don't think she's the arch nemesis. And she wasn't written that way. Let's be frank. She was not written to be the arch nemesis of the show. But I can see and understand Rich's reticence to hate or to like her based on the moral quality of her choices.
I don't know.
Rich?
Listen, I went to an old boys school, so I didn't have a lot of drama during the day. Just kind of went to class. Didn't really have cell phones, right? So it's just like you went to school and there wasn't any relationship drama during the day. I don't know.
That's fair.
Maybe it's my own, like, I'm like, what's going on at this school? Like, geez, just go to class. It's so eventful. I don't know. My days weren't as eventful at an old boys Catholic high school back in the late 90s. So,
one thing I feel like I should bring up, but maybe shouldn't at the same time because it doesn't really pertain to the show itself. But, going back to this show, after one of the main actors was imprisoned for a number of years, it's a strange thing because...
My wife walked into the room and went, hey, look, it's the sex trafficker. Do you think she was sex trafficking back then? And I was
obviously, as a 19-year-old, I don't think she was in that position until... I think it was after the show. I'm hoping it was after the show that she got involved with, I think it was Nexium or something.
Yeah, it was some sort of cult. It
was some weird cult. And it really mars the character. Even though I think Chloe's a fantastic character. Yeah. Chloe Sullivan was such a good character that they started putting her in DC Comics. Like, she was a character that they made up for the show, that they later retroactively added her to comics. But I think since the whole situation, they've just, like, deleted the character. It's just not a character anymore. And I hit the mic. It's not a character anymore in DC Comics, I don't think. It's a real shame because there's a lot of moments in this, like, where I'm like, man, she's a really good actress, like the ability to go from like smiling, faking it to all of your peers to like turning around and like just crying. Mm-hmm. That takes a lot of acting chops that I don't think a lot of these actors have personally. I don't think Lana could. At this point, I don't think Kristen Kreuk had the chops for it. Yeah, it's really. I found her performance really impressive, and it's sad to see that. It ended the way it ended.
What character just like, and Rich brought him up, but, Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor, something that I really love that this show brought about, because I'm not too sure if it was prior to the show, but like Clark and Lex having this friendship that develops. And honestly, to tell you the truth, and I know that this happens later on, but I think one of the most heartbreaking things to happen in this show is see the disintegration of that friendship. It is one of the hardest things to watch on screen because like you're like, oh man, you guys were such good friends, but you know where it's headed. Like, like it cannot be so, but you want it to be so. And it's such a good, like the push and pull and just like seeing it, like, the birth of it in this first season.
Yeah, there's something to be said about friends turned enemies, especially like as good of friends as we see Clark and Lex turn out to be in this first season. You mentioned you don't know if it started with Smallville, like if this was the first instance of that. it wasn't. This is something that's been happening for, I think it was first shown in the 60s in like a Superboy comic. Their early friendship and how that weaved into them becoming arch nemesis. But I do agree. I think that it's a very tragic, almost Shakespearean dilemma that they share. They're fated to be against each other. And you could see even from their first couple of interactions and throughout the whole season, there's a barrier between the two that they can never break.
Right, yeah.
There's a lie that Clark is telling Lex, and there's a lie that Lex is telling Clark. They love each other as close as two people can be with that wall intact. But that wall is intact throughout the entirety of the show, and they both realize that they cannot break that wall. And for Clark, it's I can't tell, this rich guy that I have superpowers or that I'm from another world, because that will open the door to people finding out my secret and potentially ruining my family and all that, blah, blah, blah. For Lex, he cannot tell Clark that he's been researching all of this stuff. He's been researching the effects of the kryptonite and all of that, because it proves that, he's been researching Clark. And so it's a back and forth between these two characters. They clearly care for each other, but there's certain things that they cannot move past. And it's a really, really good dynamic. I think that they nailed it with this show.
I like that you said that it's Shakespearean, because like whenever you get to Lex and Lionel, their interactions are so Shakespearean. Like the way they talk to each other, it's like something that you would read in something from Shakespeare.
Yeah.
My goodness, maybe I should pair this with Macbeth next year.
Oh,
forget Revenge of the Sith. I'm gonna go full Smallville.
Revenge of the Luthor.
I guess with bringing Smallville into your Revenge of the Sith, Macbeth parallels, you'd have to find an episode that really encapsulates that, because you can't show the whole show. You can't. It's a lot. And that's the thing with long form storytelling like this. It has to be done.
I'll probably just show them the euthanasia episode, because oh my goodness, that one got quick.
I don't remember which one that one.
That's the one where the mom is feeling she wants to die, and she asks her son to kill her, and he goes from
Reaper. The episode's called Reaper.
Mom, okay, I don't want to kill you, to like within the because the Freak of the Week especially has like that first 2.5 or what is it, minute and a half, usually a couple minutes before the
intro,
the
intro starts,
and then and it's like he walks in and he's like, "Hi, Mom," she's like, "I'm in a lot of pain," and he's like, "Kill me." She's like, "No," and then she's like, "Kill me," and he's like, "Fine." And like within it's like it just takes him 25 seconds to decide to kill his mom, and then the best part is that she lives.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately like how that is resolved. He finds out like, oh, she didn't need to die anyway. I think we've come to the point of the podcast where we have to discuss the Freak of the Week and how it happened, because I'm racking my brain as someone who creates YouTube videos and like lore breakdowns and is trying to like make sense of this and that and whatever. I have to ask, what is it about these stones that are from another planet that are conveniently amping up certain aspects or certain powers or certain skill sets of individuals based on their mood and or life experience? Because it's completely reliant on what is emotionally happening at the moment, or what is necessary for them to survive. So it's almost like a spiritual imparting from the stone to keep these individuals alive a little bit longer. And it's the most bizarre thing ever.
Well, it's like the room requirement.
I would say that like there's a physical element that like for the most part, I would say from pretty much almost all of them, there's a physical element that makes sense. Like you had the bug boy, where he had bugs that were in terrarium and soil that had meteor rocks in it. And obviously meteor rocks they're irradiated. They emit some sort of radiation that causes something. It's very much so apparent that it's irradiated, because when Clark gets near it, like he can even like touch it without like you see his veins just kind of like this like poison. It's like radiation poisoning that's happening. So I think that they're pretty good. The girl that becomes like a fat sucking vampire.
Amy Adams.
She
I'm just so hungry.
So crazy.
She's drinking the healthy foods that were grown in meteor rock soil, kryptonite soil.
But there's a physical act,
right?
But even that like requires a mental desire, and she's desiring to be thin. So,
right.
Like, that amplifies thinness for some reason, and that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there's almost a consciousness to it's almost like a genie granting you a wish, but it's the wish that the genie is granting you is always like, well, be careful what you wish for. And that's what it seems to be for most of the cases of these people.
Well, I don't know. You have the guy that fell into the lake that, he didn't have a desire to be colder. He came out of the lake.
He desired to be warmer, and he's now able to, suck.
Well, I mean, he was in the cold water that was radiated by the meteor rock. So obviously that altered his body chemistry. I mean, how he was able to suck the warmth. I mean, I don't know how that was, but I feel like the physical element is the primary and any emotional is like secondary, and it just kind of like, I guess they use the emotional aspect of it to make it make sense motive wise, where like you have the coach that, he was a hothead, he was angry, but then he was also in a sauna with meteor rocks. That's a hot environment.
Yes.
So
okay.
I would say each environment, I would say the catalyst was the environment that they were in, but then the emotion just was like the motive or whatever it was that allowed them to do what they did,
Hold on. We're breaking ground here, actually. Anthony, you actually have struck on a chord that I really like, because I was struggling with this mentally for a long time, determining, is this just the kryptonite keeping people alive? Is this just giving this kryptonite giving people what they want? And you actually make the connection that it's a bit of both. It's not only what they want or what they desire or what they need, but it's where they are physically in that moment, plus the emotions of what they need. And I think that's fascinating, because I don't think there's anything quite like the Freak of the Week transformations in any other like major sci-fi or anything. Kryptonite, as per Smallville standards, is kind of like the radioactive chemicals that you would see in like any other comic book, but they give them meaning with these individuals who experience and are amplified by them in different unique scenarios. So that's fascinating. That's a really good catch, Anthony. And I was actually planning on like going in on how like it doesn't make any sense from either a physical or a spiritual or a mental or emotional standpoint. But when you mix multiple of those things together, it actually does form a more cohesive bond. But it's also like, how does the kryptonite know to amplify certain things? Like what exact is it? Is it like a conscious, like almost nanobite sort of thing where like I want to do what this person wants? Is it, a more like soulful thing where like it's like a spiritual existence where it wants to amplify the soul of the person? I don't know. There's so many questions with the kryptonite, and I'm definitely looking and trying to find too much rationale in this early 2000s TV show than I can actually physically find. But it is fascinating because it's the crux of the show for a good portion of time. And I just have to mention, Lex is paying people to study kryptonite. He's just like, we can't find anything, but like, we know that there's something in this meteor rock. Dr. whatever your Hawthorne or Nathaniel, whatever your name is, study all this in your shack and find me some results. and then, they come up with the Nicodemus flower or whatever. But, like, all he has to do is go to Smallville High for a week and just, see what happens. Because there's a crazy event that happens every single week in Smallville High, and it always has to do with meteor rocks. Anthony, actually, the poster behind your head right now, it's the welcome sign to Smallville. We're in Zoom right now, and I'm looking at the Smallville, Kansas population of 45,001. And I keep thinking to myself, boy, that number has to be a little bit lower now, because there's at least 1 or 2 people that die in every single episode.
I mean, it's...
And there's no way.
It's like,
well, then you have people moving in, too.
How is Lex not seeing it in the papers, right? Like, all the stuff that's happening.
He doesn't read the Inquisitor. He's a Daily Planet kind of reader.
Let me ask you guys a question. So Desiree, right? Desiree, his brief marriage
in season 2.
Were you thrown off by the fact that her pheromones were pink?
I thought about that.
I don't know why, but I'm just like, okay, so I normally don't see women emit any kind of visible pheromones. So if it's meteor rock induced, then it would be green. It's such a small thing. It's such a
unless there are other types of meteor rock that she was infused with that we don't see at this point in the show or at all in Smallville. And we know that there is other types of meteor rock.
But she was originally from Smallville. We do know that. It's like we could figure it's probably green. I don't know.
But
right?
but yeah, before we stray too far into season 2, we'll definitely get back to that at some point. Yeah, we're visiting season 2. We don't want to go to season 2.
I'm sorry, guys. Listen, when I start binge watching, you guys know what happens.
Okay.
I can't.
No, you're good.
Right. In Smallville, we do see other forms of meteor rock, other forms of kryptonite outside of green. And even some that are outside of red as well. I think we get into black kryptonite and stuff like that later in other seasons. In the comics, there is also pink kryptonite. So in my head, that scene
you. Love it. Okay. Thank you.
She found or was like trapped in some like the amorous form of kryptonite.
I like it.
And that's what happened.
I like it.
Okay.
I accept it.
Back to season 1. Sorry.
No, you're good. I do want to say something that I really do like that this show does, and it happens in the first season, is that Clark, he doesn't have all of his powers. We get a little bit of a tease with the flight, and in this first season, it happens throughout the series too, but we get that. But in this first season, it happens with like the growth of his body, X-ray vision. This is where he gets his X-ray vision, and it coincides with a freak of the week, Tina Greer, who can morph into anybody. I thought that was like, I liked the introduction of her where like Lex just goes into a bank and robs it, but it's like not Lex.
So ridiculous. And like that would be proof that would, cripple any politician today. Like there's no getting around that. Like there's no like, you can't, what do you mean someone else did that? That was you. You're on camera. But no, Lex gets away with it.
I like how the bank manager like obviously like knew that was Lex, but still like wanted his signature. Like he's like, oh hey, Mr. Luthor, but like wanted his signature. Is like physically you could see that was Lex Luthor.
Yeah. Really.
The X-ray. The only part of the X-ray that bothered me was when he eventually does a magic trick for Lana, and he just like has her pick a card and then doesn't take any other steps other than just X-raying, right? And I didn't know that X-rays could work this way, but he can X-ray through the card, but see what's printed on the other side. I don't know how
it's very specific.
Like
that's
more like an MRI, I feel like, than it is an X-ray, but sorry.
I like that they show that it's different levels of like X-ray where he could actually like see through solid objects, but then he can actually see as if it's like an X-ray like through to the bones. He can like X-ray to like the muscle tissue and stuff. It's so insane. There's like the nerves. I really love that they like kind of explored his his abilities like to like a smaller like detail.
There's that scene where he looks at Pete and he sees through him, but he only sees like the cardiovascular system, the nerves, and like the muscles. He doesn't see any of the bones, and I think that that's such a fascinating
Yeah, I agree.
level. And there's layers to his X-ray vision. It's not strictly, like just an X-ray. They call it X-ray because that's what we have in our
right.
nomenclature. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, essentially that's what it is. Like, I mean, he's able to like see through things, and I really love that whenever he comes across a new power, and you see it here, his parents, especially Jonathan Kent, they're like, let's figure this out. Like, let's work on it. And like, he has so much like support on like how to figure out and use these abilities. He has such a really good support system.
Let's talk about the Kents. They're the best. It's probably the best depiction of the Kents, bar none. Like if we're being honest about like all of the superhero media or like Superman media that we've ever had, I think the Kents in this are just bar none perfect. In terms of just like being there for Clark, being the people that they need to be in the show, just pleasant to look at, pleasant seeming people, and I'm so happy rewatching the show. Being a little older too while rewatching it, because I get to appreciate their performances a little bit more. I think as a kid watching this show, you just see them as older people who want the best for the character. Mm-hmm. But as an adult looking at these characters, you see that they're doing everything in their power to keep their kids safe.
Especially...
while also... Yeah, go ahead.
Especially... Martha, right? She's trying to help Clark because she did the same thing to Clark when she was a kid. Because the actress who plays Clark's mom actually played Lana Lang in the Superman. I was like...
I think in Superman 3 she played Lana Lang.
And I'm like, just that to me was... like, I just love the casting. And also, I got to give a shout out to Dukes of Hazzard over there, Pa Kent. He just...
yes, yeah.
I like, as an older human, and I... do like, it's so great to cast somebody who was in the Superman movie. Like, what? I wonder how much money they had to be like, listen, lady, we really need you to be in this. Like...
maybe a lot, maybe not all that much. I mean, she was an actress, but was she still acting at that point? I don't know. Like, was she really busy? I don't know.
They were great.
I don't know if her career ever really picked up after that. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if like they really had to pull her leg or whatever, or pull her arm. I do. It's funny, man. Like, it's weird seeing Jonathan and Martha Kent and just appreciating them in new lights, like it's also weird being an adult and being like, wait a minute, Clark's mom is kind of pretty. Mm-hmm. Like yeah. When I was a kid I was just like, she's just an old lady. It's funny. Age is weird.
But I thought they were great. I mean, and I thought, the season ends pretty well. It's very bingeable also.
Yeah, it really is.
I found myself, I think we talked about taping, watching it last week. And I want to say, like, we got off and I started, right away. And, like, I think by the end of the next day, I had been through, like, 7 or 8 episodes. Like, it was really not healthy. But it's summer and it's great, but it's really bingeable. It also makes some of the cliffhangers a little bit more palatable. And I do like that they stop doing, like... the Lex breaking into the bank thing, like there are some things that happen that you're like, this can't be right. Like,
they can't do this every episode.
Sometimes they raise the stakes like so high, right? Like the fact that it's 10 seasons, like that hurricane, man, not hurricane. I'm sorry, tornado, right? Yeah. Like that did some crazy, right? Like damage, and it's also a product of the times because like everyone's phone would be beeping, right? Like I would just have that emergency.
True. Yeah.
We're kind of getting towards the end. One person that we've kind of talked about, but like not talked too much about is Pete. Like that's Clark's like, one of his like closest friends. That's like it's his best friend, somebody that he can really like confide in, who also like he doesn't tell about his powers until like later on in a different season. But yeah, he's also somebody that he's withheld, this huge secret from, especially throughout this like first season.
I really like Pete just as a character, and I do see why the actor left the show later on. I don't think he makes it past season 2 or 3 or whatever. But I wish he had more to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that they make some strides at like fixing that in season 2. But I do appreciate that this is a childhood friend of Clark's. But there's a weird thing that happens where he becomes very, perhaps unhealthily close to Lex Luthor in this first season. As a freshman in high school, he's good friends with a 24-year-old adult. It's kind of weird. It's not the weirdest thing that's ever happened, but it's up there in the weird scale of, like Smallville. Probably just under like Freak of the Week weird. But anyway, there's a point in the season where Clark actually says that Lex is his best friend. And previously, he always said that Pete was his best friend. And my wife actually was like, what about Pete? Like, and it's true. Like, Pete just, like, he just gets kind of pushed aside for a good portion of this show. And there's a couple episodes where Pete gets to shine a little bit, but it's always Pete being the person that really either gets himself into trouble or needs to be saved. That's kind of a shame to me, because I think Lana gets a lot more character development. Chloe gets a lot more character development. Even Whitney gets a lot more character development than Pete does. So I think that's not fair.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we didn't talk about him a lot because of that, right? Everybody else seems to have a lot more to their character. And then, I mean, he does... There is a point where you almost feel like, the reason that they're not hanging out as much, or the reason that he is calling Lex his best friend, is that Pete's a little sick of his garbage. There is like one scene, or I can't remember, they're in the hallway or something. He's just like, yeah, well, you can't, that's just Clark. You can't rely on him. Or, not those words, but something.
He says something along those lines, yeah. And it's true, because Clark, while being a good person, while being there for his friends when they absolutely need him, he isn't really there when they want him to be. And he's not there when he wants to be, And so in that respect, he's not a good friend visually. Like, he, from an outsider's point of view looking into their friendship, this guy's not a good friend. He's never there for you, except when he actually is there for you and you just don't see it. It's one of those weird Clarkisms where I think another thing we got to talk about is music choice, because so much of the choices in like songs that they gave the show helped flesh out the emotional state of the characters, or like the loneliness that Clark was feeling. I think the first episode starts with a song by Lifehouse, and they reintroduced that song at the end of the season. And it's about basically going the distance, but being alone at the same time. And it's a really poignant thing for Clark in this time period where he can't get what he wants because, A, he's an awkward teenager and all that. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, man. And the music, like when you listen to the music, you're like, ah, yes, the 2000s.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I love it. I do. My dad always called it CW music because it was the music that you'd only hear on like CW and like, but anyway, it works for something like this.
What are you talking about, man? I definitely listened to Papa Roach outside of Smallville.
100%.
Okay. All right.
It wasn't my last resort, man. All right. I listened to it first.
Look, man, I definitely heard Dido a lot at Publix, okay?
Oh, what else do they have? Oh, God. Sum 41 I heard on one episode. I was like, yes!
They had Sum 41. At one point, there was All American Rejects. No. They had some solid tunes in that show.
Massive Attack I heard in the background of a scene. Yeah, no, they got some stuff in there. Guys, final thoughts. Season 1. Love it, hate it. Let's start with Rich.
I'm going to watch the entire damn series. I tend to dislike characters. I think this is a good thing, right? Like, I do the same thing with Great Gatsby, kind of. I'd have to pretend every year that I don't hate the characters, and then once I start analyzing their motives and stuff, I don't like them. That aside, the villain of Lana Lang aside, the Thanos of this universe, I would heartily recommend it. If you like comic book stuff, this is a great show. If you have a significant other who's not really into comic book stuff, because of the kind of teenage angst drama, this reels in two audiences. I think this is a perfect couple show.
Sure. Okay. And I can attest to that because my wife has, like I mentioned earlier in the show, she has not watched the show previously. But, she's into those early 2000s just teen drama shows, Gilmore Girls, The OC, stuff like that. So this hits that niche where you have the teenage drama, you have that early 2000s writing style that you don't really get, plus the episode count and the expected amount of episodes per seasons that you would normally get in early 2000s shows, like cable TV shows, that you don't really get these days, plus the fact that it's a superhero drama. Like you said, Rich, it brings in two worlds, and my wife loves it, dude. Like she's like, she wants me to finish this so that I can go back and, watch another episode downstairs. She wants me actually to tell you both that, like, she was debating coming onto the podcast just to complain about one of the Freaks of the Week. Specifically. Dude,
we've been waiting. We've
one?
asked her a million times. Look, it's the summertime. Where is she?
I know. So she wanted to complain, like, the worst villain of all was the guy who, like, fell into the cold lake.
The murderer?
And the murderer who, per her, she says that, why did he just, like, come back to life and started depriving the town of all its baddies?
I mean,
and she's like, all he did was, like, go back to school and start targeting the hottest people, and she was depriving a whole school of their ecosystem. And
wait. The frozen guy, right? You mean the frozen guy?
Yes. Oh, yes. Sorry, there was two people who fell in lake. Yes. No. It was the episode Cold.
Yes, that was rather ridiculous. I do love the idea that, like, if he had been, like, somebody who wasn't as cool and it wasn't single, like, he wouldn't have been able to get anybody, right? But he had his little black book of numbers, so he was good, And I love how he forgot about Chloe's, but then looks at his hand, and despite the fact that this man has gone some sort of chemical change, like on a cellular level, right? That his body absorbs heat in a completely different fashion than it ever did before, but the number is still on his hands.
Yeah, I was actually like, the moment he fell into the lake after she put the numbers on his hand, I was like, oh man, he probably lost those numbers because, water. But nope, no, he's good. Anthony, let's bring it over to you. What are your thoughts on the first season?
Man, the first season, it is a nostalgic, ride, man. I remember binge watching that first season with you at my grandma's house, man. And remember I had gotten the season, my dad had gotten it for me, the box. I actually had, like, I have up to season 5, I think, like, I own on DVD. And yeah, man, I remember those days. And so, like, watching that kind of brought me back. It's really, like, such a nostalgic trip just watching that show. The time, we were kids at the time, and it was just like one of those things that we could always talk about every week whenever a new episode came out.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive even further into this show. Like I said, I'm a couple episodes into season 2 at this point, and even just those couple episodes, you can just tell there's a quality increase in the writer's room. And there's something about, like, they've figured out their formula, and they're just like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I'm excited to get back into that because this show gets so good. It really does. And it already was good in the first season. It's just kind of, you have to suspend a lot of disbelief because of the amount of people, specifically teenagers, angsty teenagers, who are transformed by some meteorite.
Hey guys. So he's an old guy. So he used to kill people when he was younger, when he was, it was back in the 50s. So how do people in the 50s kill people? It's got to be a garrote, right? It's got to be a garrote. Like, I love that he just carries around a garrote like an old-timey mafia villain.
No. Those are piano strings. Come on now.
I would say, actually, I think that transformation was definitely a desire. That one was one. That was one of the ones that was a desire. And then the catalyst, I guess, that made it happen was him being electrocuted in water that had meteor rocks. But the physicality of that doesn't make sense as far as him getting younger. The other ones you can explain because dude fell into a cold lake. Dude was in a hot sauna. The other one was attacked by bugs that were irradiated by, like that stuff made sense. But I don't know. I guess electricity, water, and meteor rocks equal younger self.
One of these days,
desire.
guys, one of these days, I am going to go through this show and I'm going to compile a list of all of the cases of people getting some sort of kryptonite poisoning or boons that they receive power-wise, and I'm gonna figure out. I'm gonna boil down exactly what it is that's happening to these individuals, because there's got to be something. It's like some magic system that I haven't cracked yet. Anthony, you came pretty close. We're gonna figure it out. Guys, thank you so much for listening to us here for our 129th episode of Project Geekology. 129 episodes is a far cry from the over 200 episodes of Smallville, but we were able to cover, at least in a roundabout way, the first 21 of those. So thank you so much for listening to us here for our latest episode. Please be sure to check back soon for our next episode. If you want to check out any of our socials, be sure to click down into the show notes and, go find out what we're covering next, guys. Thanks. Have a good one.
Somebody save me.